Welcome to CEDAR 2020 and the residential discussion, in which we'll be talking about how the economic shock could realign the sector. We've got a great panel, and I'd like to give each of the panelists a moment to introduce themselves. So perhaps we could start with Octavian. If you could just introduce yourself, your company, and briefly what it is you guys do.
Yes, I'm Octavian Matake. I'm the commercial manager of Speedwell. Speedwell is a well-established developer in Romania with both residential and office developments and also mixed use. So we also have a very good track record and 6 developments ongoing at this point.
Okay. Antoanella?
Hello everyone, I'm Antonella Comșa. I'm the general manager of Gran Via. Gran Via is a residential developer. We developed until now more than 1,800 apartments already sold. Currently we have 3 projects under construction with about 700 apartments.
Fantastic. And Simona from Schönherr?
Hello, I'm Simona Chirică. I'm a real estate partner, head of real estate in Schönherr Rechtsanwälte, Bucharest, a law firm. And we are advising the clients in residential sector, mainly the developers, in their legal matters regarding their developments.
Fantastic. And Andrei, tell us about yourself and SVN.
Hello, my name is Andrei Sârbu. I represent SVN Romania. I am the CEO of the company. We have business in all real estate sectors, providing consultancy for our customers. Main areas in which we work is the residential sector, in which we have the biggest achievements. We are selling around 2,500 residential annually annually. Also, we have business in property management. We have under maintenance somehow above 600,000 square meters. Also, we have a mortgage brokerage company. Also, we do land transactions, and we have business in the residential free market in Cluj, Brașov, and Bucharest.
Fantastic. So I think we have all our bases covered. We have many different ways in which to look at the market, and I think that's important because I think at the beginning, when the crisis hit, there was a tendency to think only about the pandemic, nothing else. So I think our minds were all just very focused on that. But as we begin to move out of this first phase, I thought it would make sense to put the pandemic in a bit of context. In other words, to think about the impact that it's had and will have. In order to understand that, we need to know what we were experiencing beforehand. I would say all over Central and Eastern Europe, 4 or 5 months ago, residential prices were in a bit of a crisis, especially in the capital cities, where the middle class was often getting squeezed out of the market because prices were increasing so quickly. Not the fault of developers as much as simply a lack of supply, construction prices, a whole host of things. I think we found that government attempts to stop this trend often had counterproductive effects. We've now had a real shock to the economic system and also one to the psychology of people, of consumers. And I think, especially with residential, that's a really important aspect because people are not going to buy a new flat if they're worried about losing their job. On the other hand, if prices are going up really quickly, they might buy for the wrong reasons, either because they're afraid very soon prices would be unaffordable or because maybe they fear missing out on an investment opportunity. We now have a chance to look at a market that's been stalled in some ways for a while and is undergoing a restart. So I'd be curious how you would describe the market, though, just before the coronavirus hit. Was it cooling off? Was it spiraling out of control?
I'd like to start answering, please.
Great. I was going to point to you, so go for it.
Yeah. I tend to disagree with you, at least regarding Romania, for the right reasons. Meaning, If we take a two-room apartment, a normal two-room apartment in the Romanian market, just before the Corona crisis, let's call it this way, you as a customer having a normal salary on the average, in 8.5, 8.7 years, you were able to secure the entire value of a mortgage, which is huge for Romania because during the previous crisis of 2008, 2009, you needed more than 300 salaries to close it, which, in my opinion, this brings for the clients a huge capacity of buying. So, in my opinion, there was no, let's say, hitting up the market. Also, developers, and Antonella can confirm, also in Speedwell, they can confirm the margin was very low, extremely low, meaning even considering an IRR of, I don't know, maybe below 10%. So, except for prices going up in construction, and this reflecting the selling prices, I don't see any problem. Regarding the Corona crisis, for these 3 months that the residential market was hugely affected, I can give you some figures. When they stopped the emergency situation, let's say, we calculated a rate of 31% decrease in transactions. 31%. On new transactions, we were not able to calculate yet, but indeed we saw a drop of 80%, more or less, because people were not could not get out of the houses, which was a problem. The notary offices worked, indeed, but the majority of the transactions were transactions previous to this Corona crisis. But still, all in all, calculating everything, we saw a drop of 30%. Regarding the price, which is extremely important, we were seeing in February, I believe, a price increase compared to the last year of 5.3%, an increase. At the end of the month of May, we see an increase in prices of 3%, considering the total market, which for us, okay, we can accept that there was a drop in transactions. We expect this drop to be, I don't know, let's say covered, or to see the sales picking up again. But the price is the main reflection of what happened to the residential market, because you don't see modifications with the price. I mean, I don't want to say that we don't have any problems. I don't want to say that everything is shiny and bright, but still, it didn't affect us so much. I cannot tell you what's going to happen on a medium term, let's say, because I'm not that smart. I cannot predict it. I don't know if a second wave or a third wave might come and struck us. But for the moment, things are looking quite good. There are projects in the market that do extremely well because they were extremely well positioned. Especially projects selling houses or selling apartments with big terraces, because this was, let's say, the main driver for this period. And I can give you an example. I don't know if I'm allowed to talk names, but I can give you an example. Cosmopolis, for example, which is the biggest project in the market and our main customer, let's say, they sold during the month of May 40 apartments, which is huge, huge indeed. Also, we have some projects in Constanța, which seems like a great city for selling apartments. We closed to date this month 30 units in Novopolis. This is another huge project that we market. So, seems like things are picking up.
Okay, fantastic. Antonella, maybe I could begin with you. Give me a sense from a developer's point of view where we were, say in January. What were you expecting uh, in terms of 2020? Were prices, do you think, were they under control, do you think, or was the market perhaps slowing down a little bit already? I just ask because I think all over Europe and even globally, there was a sense that this economic boom has to come to a slowdown at some point. But I'm just curious, how was that manifesting itself in Romania's residential market?
The problem for us was mainly the manpower. So the price, the construction cost was not decreasing. We are expecting to increase for 2020. It's true that because of this coronavirus crisis, they didn't increase too much. On the other hand, I can tell you that for the last days I saw an increase of price for the steel. So even during those 2-month period where when everything was more or less closed and the production was decreasing, now I can see that the prices are coming back. Okay, other prices didn't decrease. So regarding the construction cost, I do not expect to decrease too much. Even if a lot of Romanians coming back from abroad, they are not from the construction field, in my opinion. They are from other fields like healthcare, like tourism, like restaurants, so far and so on. So anyhow, even last year, we had a necessary of 200,000 workers in the construction field, which was not covered. So I don't see why the prices for the construction cost to decrease this year. Maybe what I think is that because some of the projects will not start, because it seems that there are developers who are thinking if they will start new phases, new projects, maybe in this case we will have enough manpower to be able to finalize the projects in time. For us was a big problem, the lack of manpower increase the time for completion for a project. So from our point of view, the prices will remain at least the same this year. Regarding the sales and what Andrei said, it is true that for this 2 months the number of the new sales was decreasing because probably like us, also other developers, they closed the selling offices. We prefer to do this in order to secure the sites and to continue the work on site. So now, as we open since 18th of August, I can tell you that for some of our projects we have more visits than before the crisis. We sold in some projects in 1 week the number of the apartments which have been sold before the crisis in 1 month. So, and there are not cheap apartments. I don't talk about studios below 50,000 euro. So I see that it is an interest on the market. Of course, that we are depending on what it will happen with the economy, with the state aids for the companies, and I'm very confident.
Octavian, do you share that type of confidence? I mean, maybe you could give us, I mean, how were your sales just before the pandemic, and how were you able to keep that momentum going, if that was possible, while the crisis was happening?
Yeah, so somehow I confirm what Antonella was saying earlier. Looking at Q4 2019 and the first 2 months in 2020, there was a healthy rhythm of sales, so it was according to our forecast. I think that also the balance between the prices in the market and the costs that a developer has, it's for this previous period of time at a normal level. if we are looking at the start of pandemic, it's normal to talk about a decrease in volumes of transactions. So we have seen this, we have witnessed this, but this isn't somehow reasonable and logic to happen because, as Antonella was saying, although the sites continue to work, we have moved people in homes, so there have been, everyone has been in a work from home program, our employees, our sales agents, so people were not so much present in the sales offices. It was normal to see a decrease in the number of transactions. Now that the activity is restarting and we are seeing again coming back to a normal level of visits in the site, I feel that the market is coming back. So we are looking with optimism towards the future. It's true that we are also dependent on the bank's conditions. So we also need to talk about this point because as a company, you depend at the level of financing, and also as a customer, when you are buying with a mortgage, you are also depending on the evolution of the financing conditions of the banks. This is, as you know, ongoing, so it will depend what will happen in the next 6 months. But at this point, talking about the present, we are seeing, with a small decrease, we are seeing an expectable level of transactions. What's also again important is the stage of the project that you are selling. It's one thing to sell a finalized product. It's another thing to selling off plan. So that's another thing to be analyzed. But again, I feel that in the next 3 to 6 months, the market will continue to grow. And let's hope that next year will be even a better year than this one.
Okay. Simona, your legal company, shown here, that I'm sure you're dealing with developers and banks and potentially even clients that are active and investing in the residential market. What is the feeling that you're getting in terms of expectations on prices, and what was the impact just on doing business of the lockdown? Were you able to complete contracts via Zoom and Skype, or how did that work in reality?
I think an accurate, let's say, analysis or answer is to split the question in two phases. The first one is one regarding the pandemic period, and afterwards, and the second phase is what's next. Of course, if we refer only to pandemic period, it's I am aligned with the other speakers. It was a suspension, a severe suspension of the, let's say, of the players to move forward. They just moved the bottleneck, or they tried to suspend a little bit the transactions from objective reasons like fear, or they were not in the city, or they could not find let's say the professionals, the notaries, maybe also the some experts. It's true. However, what was in the pipeline, so like the inertia or the lethargy, moved on. So in this period, what was in the pipeline could be finalized. There was no legal restriction to close transactions. Both the notary public, the notary publics, the lawyers and the bailiffs were obliged by a presidential decree to work. So we were not allowed to close our offices. So in theory, and also at least from lawyers' perspective, we worked, but we moved from the office home. All the signings and all the closings were very well structured, and the details were established before, like the reservation of the date and of the time and in the hour, and the parties enter into the room in the notary publics on different hours. So first the seller and afterwards the buyers, or the other way around. So it was a change in the way the transaction, let's say the details of the signings were done. I saw a lot of questions, typical questions of crisis, like force majeure or hardship, or some partners who wanted to let's say, benefit of this crisis and to try to get out of a contract that was not so beneficial anymore, or they try to use the opportunity. Of course, legal-wise, from our perspective, the pandemic was could not be qualified as a suspension of the agreement, of a pre-sale agreement, of a real estate agreement, because there is no interdiction to close it. This is from like analysis or a short description on the way how the transactions were conducted during this period. Secondly, if we go on the next stage, I think we should be mature and to have an overview on a mid and long term, because of course if we analyze only this 9-10 weeks, one may say it's a disaster, because to delay your decision, the delay of the decision may affect some of us, the real estate agents, the lawyers, the notaries, the brokers, the banks. However, from my perspective and the projects in which we are involved, none of the projects and the decisions are short-term projects. So a decision to secure a land, to acquire a land, to carry on a due diligence, to secure the land and to fulfill some steps before the date you start building and erecting a project, residential project. It's a long-term project. So I think it is not so mature to judge and to qualify as a disaster, because no one is dropping. You cannot. The real estate is always an important matter. You cannot leave the assets without taking a decision in respect of them. Either you are a bank, either you are a seller or a developer or a final user. You cannot leave them like an office or like a commercial space. Normally, these kind of units, let's say, of residential units, are rather more relevant than the others, and someone takes a decision either to lease it there is always a legal, let's say, agreement in respect of this kind of projects. With regard to what's next, I see the change, the paradigm will change a little bit. And I agree with Antonella and with Andrei. I saw that the focus and the demand increased on the houses with gardens and apartments maybe with terraces. And this will change a little bit of also the legal review of the documents requested in order to acquire or to sell this kind of, let's say, new products. Because it's not the same from legal point of view to acquire an apartment compared to a house of a garden, like an independent. From legal point of view, the duty of care and the accuracy requires a little bit more resources to investigate the land acquisition, and because you will go finally in a moment, or you'll want to go finally to the bank to get the financing. So before, the final users were not so interested in reviewing, in conducting a very accurate and detailed due diligence of the land acquisitions, because they are good faith acquirers. Now, if they change to gardens, houses of gardens, they are obliged to do a more detailed due diligence, because they will be interested to get a financing or to further sell it, and you cannot do it if you have legal problems. And we know that Romania has still a big problem related to the cadastre system. we don't have a uniform and yet a systematic cadastre unit. And this
Okay,
is the reason
right.
also for which it is easier to sell maybe apartments and not plots of land, or because there is further, still in Bucharest at least, and also in the other cities, Constanța, or in the regions where there was no land book register, there are a lot of inconsistencies. And this is a truth that should be constantly analyzed by both by the developers and also by the final consumers. There are
Great, thanks.
mainly inconsistencies, but these inconsistencies should be remedied in a
Okay.
moment of time.
Okay. Andre, I take your point that that things are perhaps not so critical in terms of prices, but I'm curious if if there's any concern on your part that as in every other recession, prices often all of a sudden look a little bit fragile. Residential can be different because there is a lot of psychology that goes into it, and there's often sort of imbalances in the market. Is the balance of supply and demand in Bucharest, if we could start with that, do you think it's steady enough that prices should be robust enough to withstand even if there is a drop in demand?
We have estimated deliveries for 2019 more or less around the figure of 15,000, which happened. So more or less this, let's say, virtual stock of apartments was satisfying the market, and eventually maybe 1 year after, all of this stock was disbursed to clients. So just before the pandemic, things looked very okay. I told you in the beginning that the buying power of the average Romanian has increased in the last 10-12 years a lot. To secure a mortgage in 8-9 years is huge. I don't see this happening in other, let's say, European countries. So still, having this in mind, I don't see that is a major or that 3 months of stop can abruptly change this paradigm.
Mm-hmm.
But what Octavian said, and is very important, we need liquidity from the banks. And if this liquidity is not satisfied, this might be a problem. Our colleagues in the credit department, they are expecting that the banks will adjust the down payment for the residential retail units at the level of 25%. This 25%, it's a problem for the entire market, because it is a 60% increase from the 15% that was previously set in the market. So this somehow drops the liquidity that is accessible to the market. This is my, let's say, my major concern. If we have this level of down payment of, I don't know, back to 15%, I wouldn't have any problems. Also, we expect a new type of buyer. This type of buyer was present before, but now I believe that the yield investors are going to focus a lot on the residential market, because where to put the money, to keep it in the bank, to go into gold, to go in the stock exchange, this is extremely risky. To go into bonds, you have the same risks of sovereign debt eventually. So my belief is that a lot of capital from these investors, big and small, will focus on the residential market, in a residential market that provides a yield of 6.5%, which is extremely good in my opinion for these current times. So I expect a lot of push by investors in this area, and will provide for the, of course some customers are being left out also by their personal thoughts, but the drive of the residential, I don't remember what you stated, the feeling that they have. Okay, some of them will be left out of because of their personal thoughts. Some of them will be left out because of the lack of accessibility to credit. But I think this one will be, let's say, covered by these investors. Even I see that the investors will pick up a big stake from the market. Also, in 3-5 years, we expect this multifamily product that is in the States and in Western Europe at a high level to be also, let's say, coped by the Romanian market as well. I believe you know what I'm talking about, is big investors buying bulk apartments and renting them to the customers. Still, I don't see such big disturbance to the market yet.
Wow. So, Antonella, it almost seems as if this pandemic was just like a little 8-week chapter in our lives that everyone will have forgotten. Do you see no long-term impact from this, or is it simply going to be very quickly business as normal again?
In my opinion, is that first of all, I think that we should go in the business now, because we cannot stay in this stage. As I saw and as I talk with a lot of other friends and colleagues, in my opinion, probably we will have like a period of 3-6 months, yes, where we will see the effects what have been done, but slowly we will come to what have been before the crisis. And I want to make also short notice to what Andrei said regarding the financing of the clients. It is true that some banks, not all, some banks increase the advance for the apartment. But on the other hand, we should not forget that the National Bank decreased the interest, which meaning that also ROBOR and DRCC are on the slower level since May 2018. So based on that, we will have a larger number of persons who will be able to take a loan. Yes, because we know that it is a rule, you cannot have more than 40% in debt. So now, because of decreasing of ROBOR and DRCC, a lot of more persons can afford a loan. This is on one hand, and on the other hand, also I agree with you that people will start to invest in residential, because if we look on the studies. Currently in the banks, the value of the deposit is higher than the value of the loans. Okay, so that means people, they have money on the banks, and because what I am thinking that the inflation will rise. Yes, in this moment I think to invest the money in the real estate is a good opportunity.
Octavian, just quickly over to you. Are you guys? Do you see a rental market arriving in Bucharest or elsewhere in Romania, possibly as a result of this, that you would be able to get involved in?
So, although we are not seeing it today, probably as the market becomes more and more mature and we are going in the same direction as other markets, as Andrei said earlier, it would be natural to happen, because we are talking about higher yields and we are talking about a more stable segment of the market, talking about residential. As I told you, we are developing both in residential and office in our portfolio, but residential, maybe also related to the pandemic, can in the future be a more stable and more attractive segment than any other that you find, both in terms of yield, but also in terms of predictability of the demand. because as you know, people continue to buy houses. There is a real need. There is a real need for new stock in Romania. So residential might be the new star in the future. And yes, we do expect in the future to see big investors coming and buying bulk packages of apartments.
Okay. Well, thanks very much for those words, and actually to the entire panel. We don't have, unfortunately, time at this point for more. I think it's fascinating to see how many of these same debates are happening all over Central Europe, but especially in Bucharest, it really seems as if there's just so much momentum behind the residential market at this point that it does seem as if business is going to continue pretty much as usual, given a bit of time. I'd like to thank you all for taking part today in this remote online assisted conference. I really hope we can meet again soon in Bucharest for a face-to-face meeting in some type of more standard form. At any rate, thank you very much for your participation, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Have a nice day.
Bye.